Important issue today that seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. Please welcome Bulelani from the Movement for Asylum Seekers.
I have to confess, I saw somebody a clergyman walking around. So when I attended my first Pride, I was a teenager and I used to hate speeches. So I'm here about to give a speech and I'm very nervous, so bear with me. South Africa is often hailed as an example of progress when it comes to LGBT people in Africa. This is because in 1996, South Africa became the first country in the world to enact a constitution that explicitly prohibits discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. No other country had done that. And remains the only country in Africa that provides legal recognition of marriage between people of the same sex. And yet Joey and Anisha Fanikak, two homosexual women, had been married for just over 3 years when they were raped, they were murdered, and they were burnt in their car. Tapelo Makutla was 23 years old when they cut off his tongue, they slit his throat, and cut off his genitals and shoved them in his mouth, because he was a gay man in South Africa. Nongi Smaus is a lesbian woman who was raped, stoned, and burnt to death. A transgender student at my university, the University of the Western Cape, was beaten to a pulp with campus security watching. Other students around campus gathered to watch and laugh at the incident. If you were a homosexual or a transgender person and lived down the road from where any of them lived, you'd fear for your life. You'd be scared that you may be next. You'd be scared to step outside the door of your own house. But then again, you may not be safe in your own home. Lolu Voswelindao was a lesbian woman. She was abducted from her home and they executed her. They shot her execution style. She told her partner to hide when she saw people were coming to her house. And her partner survived because he was hiding in the closet. There are some of the many people who experience violence, inhumane and degrading treatment because of their sexual orientation or gender identity or no gender identity in South Africa. Many lesbians are raped in a disturbing act called corrective rape, where men target a lesbian woman to show them what they are missing out. It's unacceptable in our laws, but society still frowns upon homosexuality. And just a few years ago, we even had a gang whose sole mission was to hunt and kill gay men, and they killed several gay people. LGBT plus people across the developing world are forced to leave their countries and seek protection elsewhere. Many of them apply for protection in Ireland and end up in direct provision centers. I'm one of them. You will see some of them working with Outhouse. It is documented that LGBT plus people in direct provision experience the same old prejudices that led them to seek protection in the first place. I was forced to share a bedroom with a homophobic man in direct provision. I also heard homophobic slurs from other South Africans in direct provision centers. I informed the International Protection Office and they couldn't be bothered to do anything about it. Some women seeking protection in Ireland have to sell sexual favors in order to make ends meet because they live on €21.60. If you have €21.60, I challenge you today or tomorrow to go to any store to buy toiletries and see as a woman how much you can buy from that. Mercy, the movement of asylum seekers in Ireland, begs you to call your politicians, the TDs who make decisions in Ireland, to tell them that you are bothered by the treatment of LGBT plus people who have to endure prejudice in direct provision centers across Ireland. Tell them that you are bothered by the women who resort to selling sexual favors to make ends meet in direct provision. Tell your politicians that you care about the children who grow up not knowing, not ever seeing their parents work or cook for them. When I was young, my parents cooked. They made sure that I had a meal every day, and that meal was prepared with love. Their children in direct provision have to queue for a meal in the canteen and they have to queue for their school lunches. It's the same thing over and over again. You get sick of smelling the same spices over the same. International protection applicants in Ireland until recently were not allowed to work, but politicians made a decision to allow some of them to work, but they won't allow everybody in direct provision to work. So people who have been staying in direct provision for years and years will still have to put up with the indignity of not being able to provide for themselves. They will depend on your tax money. They will live on handouts in direct provision centers where they have to queue for a meal. But most of them are actually professionals. Some of them are academics, professors in their own country. Some were as a journalist and some was a nurse, and they're still unable to work because they have experienced administrative barriers. Some of them can't even open bank accounts. So we beg you to support asylum seekers in Ireland and contact any of the politicians that you know in your area and ask them to support the rights of asylum seekers in Ireland. Thank you.